If you say, well, I'm doing this because I love myself, and it's not true, in that moment, you're not feeling love for yourself. So if you specifically say, I'm doing this to demonstrate love for myself, and a part of you says, well, you suck right now, you say, well, so what? I'm the adult in my life, and we're still going to forward and going to do this. Hey, everybody, Jeff here. Before we get started, if you're getting value from the podcast, please take a moment to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. For those of you listening on podcast apps, don't forget to rate and review. Your support really helps the show reach more people, and for that, I am truly grateful. Now let's dive in.
Welcome to The Point with Jeff Spikes, the show about achieving goals, embracing growth, and finding your true path. And now, here's your host, Jeff Spikes.
Hello and welcome to The Point. This is your host, Jeff Spikes, and it is a pleasure to see you here and to work with you today. It's such a cool thing to feel free enough to know you can do something different. And I'm going to, let's keep this to the point today and really talk about what's going on here. The idea is to give you the fastest, most understanding path to set a new norm that's better than what you have so far. It's this idea that when something really exciting happens because you've done well and you feel good and you're like, wow, this is great. You had this maybe it was an immediate awareness of something you needed to have an awareness of that, or finally something you learned differently than you learned it before and it felt so good. It is what happens when that becomes the norm. Is there a buy-in or a gain to not allowing ourselves for that to be the norm? Because then somewhere in your psyche, in your consciousness or your subconsciousness that says, boy, if this doesn't give me this great feeling, then what will? And it might be that this is what gives you the feeling you're looking to get. And if you lose that, then how will you feel elated and good and positive? Well, imagine if everything is expandable and it's limitless, then that just doesn't happen. It doesn't mean your brain can't conceptually tap into that or tie into that and then choose that that's the limit. Therefore, you want to stay excited about that but when that becomes the norm, when you heighten your feeling where that is normal, personal experience, what I've learned is that I still feel excited. I still have the elation. It's just I live in a stronger sense of that positive, resourceful, emotional frame. And then something even greater can then feel the elation, and that can continue to increase. Now, I have experienced an increase in that area whereas it does not appear to have a limit on the top side. Joy doesn't have a limit on the top side. I don't have to limit or restrict the amount, and you don't have to eliminate or restrict the opportunity to feel joy and to continue feeling more joy. So how do you get there? This entire year, you might have been listening to different podcasts and listening to the concepts and discussions and wonder, how do you really get there? Well, today you're going to get 3 clear points. I've taken notes. I'm going to stay perfectly on target for you so that you can hear exactly what it is you're meant to hear and know exactly what it is that you can do to set a new standard. And that new standard could be a number in your bank account. In one of the earlier episodes this year, you got to experience through this idea where your comfort level is of what you mentally in your mind think is broke when you are out of cash or don't have enough. And for some people, that's millions of dollars. When they go below a certain mark, they're uncomfortable. So it really has to do with how much money you have flowing out. It has to do with the flow. But a way of moving through that is that if you're in a starting point in life and in savings and in maybe starting your family or a restarting point because you've moved and you've used some of the resources you have and you want to build that back up, is to raise up the comfort level so that when you used to be uncomfortable, let's say with $30,000 in the bank or with $100,000 in the bank or $1 in the bank, if you are under $1,000 in the bank, conceptually think about how that feels and what that looks like and what's that discomfort all about, and literally move that discomfort level to a higher number. So conceptually, it's great. Well, how do we actually get there? It starts with really specific and precise communication. Now, you might have thought on occasion or time to time some of the specificity, some of the specific nature of words that we talk about using that you get to choose seems benign, seems kind of pointless. So like, why do we go to that level of detail? Well, the number one thing is to leverage this way of influencing yourself through communication, through how you communicate with yourself, right? So if you challenge vague and limiting beliefs, the language that doesn't really give you clarity of purpose and clarity of vision, then you can start thinking more specifically. That's where SMART goals and SWOT analysis and all these things have come from, is moving from a vague picture of a result that we might discuss and bringing it into communication to a specific, clear picture. You build this system of communication that really emphasizes and clarifies the understanding of what's happening with you and the people that you're communicating to. Begin to understand who your audience is, even if it's an individual, and what are they hearing when you're communicating. That's really clear. So when you get specific and clear, you gain alignment, and you ask others on a team, if this is a business type of or work environment or family environment, getting everyone in the family to use the same language for the same things. That clarity works really well. So do that quickly. Step 2 to that, once you've been really specific with what you want, how you want it, and get clarity around these things, you challenge the vague, non-specific comments and thoughts that you make, and really get clear with that picture and vision of what you want. Then what you can do is you can start creating new behaviors, and this is where the choice comes in. New words to use with yourself, new actions that you'll take, and then you can practice anchoring techniques, ways to anchor that, whether it's a physical anchor, a verbal anchor, maybe it's a way you think every time you do something. We use base repeatables. My base repeatable in the gym was, every time I go to the gym, I get stronger. Everyone I know and love gets stronger. That's a way of anchoring it. I tap my forehead sometimes. And that became an anchor for push through. When I wanted to stop or when I wanted to quit, I'd come back and do this and say, no, I'm moving forward. Common thing in training is to teach people to grab their ear, and that means something. So you can create these anchors. Some people tap their foot 3 times. Whatever it is, you can do that. You can get more or less specific with how you anchor things. You can anchor things through stories. You can use fun things like movies and scenes from movies that you remember, or a song. Songs are amazing to anchor a state, an emotional state, and remember how you felt at a given time, and to hold ourselves back into these feelings. Well, that helps, right? So if you move forward and go through these anchors, then you can work them on a standard basis and do these repeatable things that help deliver these behaviors even when you don't necessarily want to do them. The concept that you've got to consider over the past year with this show is this idea that demonstrating love to yourself through the actions and behaviors of your day, whether it's how you choose to eat, how you choose to care for yourself in the morning or at night with your routines, or whether it's going to the gym, anything, is choosing to demonstrate love to yourself so that even when you don't feel good about yourself, you can still demonstrate it. See, there's the specificity that you might be thinking of. That's the specific difference between being vague or clear. If you say, well, I'm doing this because I love myself, and it's not true, in that moment, you're not feeling love for yourself. It doesn't fit the same way for intention for moving forward. So if you specifically say, I'm doing this to demonstrate love for myself, and a part of you says, well, you suck right now, you say, well, so what? I'm the adult in my life, and we're still going to forward and going to do this, right? I'm still demonstrating love. And if you're speaking to a part of yourself, you can say, I'm still demonstrating love to you because it's okay that you're having a bad minute, but I love you and we're doing this anyway, right? So, or I don't love you, but I'm going to demonstrate it like I do, right? So that's the idea, right? Demonstrate it so that in the case that you might not be feeling that way, you can still do it. Now, you might be, consider you being the person who always loves yourself, who just naturally, you wouldn't even think of doing anything other than building yourself up and feeling great about who you are and what you do. It's a great place to be. Imagine yourself being that person, and how much of an impact could you make in people's lives? How much good could you do? Thinking about that. These are ways to set a new standard. So the next piece is to consider along the way any of these limiting beliefs that come in. There's this principle that comes into play that says there is no failure, only feedback. When I get a result that's less than desirable, it's just feedback. And thank goodness it's just feedback, because that gives me the opportunity to stop and learn what I need to learn from it, so I don't have to repeat it. Or I learn if it's something I do want, something I can learn from it that I can duplicate it over and over and over. That is how we set a new standard. We hit an elevated spot in life, in our emotion, in our feelings, in our state, in the results we're getting, and we think, how can I duplicate this and do this over and over? Rather than that's setting a new standard, rather than just being grateful for it and then letting everything settle back down to the old standard. Ways when you make an improvement, it's setting a new standard. It is 2024 right now, and you're ready to go into 2025. Can you think of a better time to set a new standard? That is part of the principle and part of the idea of considering what you're leaving behind in 2024, is that a new standard has already been set. Dismantle, tear apart these limiting beliefs. When you're thinking, well, I either need to do this or this. I'd like to get a new car, but I need to get a new car. Well, should I get a new car, or should I buy this new furniture? Tear that apart. Why not do both? Well, now you probably came up, if you're in a limited belief, you probably came up with a handful of reasons instantly, maybe even before I said that. Dismantle that. Tear that apart. Get it on paper. List it out. What is it that you just said and thought that had you believing that you had to make a choice between one or the other, and instead think, what is it that I could do to have both? What are my options? That's one of the other things of setting a new standard, is to consider all the options rather than allow your thoughts to isolate yourself down to a given choice that may not be necessary if you make a different decision. Until you open your mind up to the idea of what you're wanting and all of the possibilities of how to get there, you're limiting your options. So that's the clearest, shortest picture of what you can get today on how to set a new standard in your life. It's literally a reprogramming process that starts with leveraging this specific communication to get really clear on what you're wanting, how you're speaking about it, and what you're saying, and all of that terminology around the linguistics of what you're saying. And then it's creating the new habits through anchors. So rather than just forcing yourself into a repetition, which is a very slow, mundane way of moving forward that doesn't always get the best results, actually anchor these things in with that specific thinking and with new anchors and ways of doing it, so that you're maximizing and you're actually making more than one gain at a time. The book, there's a book out there about it's easier to 10 times than 1 time. So it's easier to 10 times your efforts than it is to double your efforts. And that's not the name of the book, but I was reading it the other day. I don't remember the actual name of it. Clearly, it's easier to do it all up at once, but we'll get there, right? It's taking it in bits and pieces, right? So setting a new standard, you're going through this and you're putting many pieces together at one time, understanding what all of the different, how everything else affects it, so that you might do one thing that affects 4 things and another thing that affects 3 things. All of a sudden, you're doing 2 things that affect 10 forward movements. It affects this energy of moving forward. And physical training, getting steps, doing things like that is one of the reasons that's such a popular way of changing things, is that it has such an amazing lateral move because it creates more energy. So it's easy to talk about, right? It's low-hanging fruit in the realm of talking about what change is and how to make it happen. It's such a great example. Doesn't mean that it's limited to physical activity. And that last piece is really evaluate, tear apart these limiting beliefs you might have to elevate the understanding and picture of and vision of what you want in life and what could happen. Anytime you're in these binary, these duality choices of this or this, consider, why are you thinking that way? What is it you could do? What if it's both? And how to move forward. You do that and you'll naturally begin to move into setting new standards. couple clients this last week gave feedback. All of these advancements were being made in life that felt very natural and normal, yet 12 weeks ago or 6 weeks ago in two different cases, it was the furthest thing from their mind of thinking that they could reach these productivity levels and even have on their sights the goals that they're now going after that seem simple. And we went through this designing process, and to come circle back and then connect the dots to look at what you've been practicing and learning and look at how it's now affected all of these other areas of your life. All the things that you've already been able to accomplish that seemed so overwhelming at the time are because we slowed it down into this facet of setting new standards and new beliefs and targeting ourselves towards really specific short goals, which automatically expanded to how we do things. Because as soon as the embodiment of who you are begins to feel and understand a better way to do it, you naturally move into those ways. So all of a sudden, in both of these sessions, it was clearly an advanced way of moving that they were beside themselves. And what seemed difficult before seemed easy now. And what was difficult was not unsurmountable. It was clearly defined and simple, something that they were working through to overcome. So, but they had leveraged many decisions and much time in the designing wheel, and it just moved forward quickly. Tell you though, if you're living a less intentional life and you're not aware of how everything affects it, when you sit still too long and do nothing without intention, and I don't mean sit still and meditate, that is doing something, or contemplate, that is doing something. I mean, when you just check out and choose not to be intentional at all and then end up somewhere, you've done the same thing. You've leveraged the things that get you something you don't want, and you've ended up wondering, how did I get here? If we dismantle that, that's dismantling the limiting beliefs and the lack of intention. You turn that around and then put intention towards it, and guess where you end up? So that's how you set a new standard. 3 clear, simple steps on how you set new standards in your life. Take that, run with it in the week between Christmas and New Year's as Hanukkah starts. And as you go through Hanukkah, if you're Jewish, think about these things and how amazing it will be as you set new standards for yourself. And not just set them, but accept them and step into them and be the new standard that you get to set in your life. 2025 is already off to a phenomenal start. I'm really excited to run into that. We're not going to have a Christmas Eve the Monday of Christmas. We're not going to do an episode. We're going to do 1 episode between Christmas and New Year's, not 2, and then kick it back up at the New Year. It's just amazing to receive feedback, to have conversations. There's some really exciting things coming for 2024 with designing calls and with all types of interactions as far as helping people expand their brands and their names and the visions of who they are and how you want to impact the world. All kinds of exciting things with how to help you market and advertise and develop your brand. There's just a lot of beautiful things have come out of these past few months as we've considered new ways to move forward and be positive. Thank you all. Thank you very much for your feedback and for your conversations and for your pushback and everything that's come through this. I look forward to seeing you guys on the next time.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of The Point with me, Jeff Spikes. Please visit jeffspikes.com for everything you would need to know to engage with me offline. And lastly, thank you for your time, your attention, and your consideration. This is The Point.